What's up, everyone? Welcome back to TFC on the Road. They say a defense can be repaired with one signing. One center back arrives, one problem disappears, and the whole structure suddenly looks stable again. Football rarely works that way. A back line is not one player. It is spacing, communication, timing, and trust. It is a shape that survives only if every part moves with the others. That is why Toronto FC's move for Benjamín Kuscevic mattered. The club had already signed Walker Zimmerman to bring order and authority to the center of the pitch. A day after introducing Josh Sargent as the new reference point in attack, Toronto turned back toward its other problem and added a second experienced central defender, this time with a South American background and a calmer style of defending. So the real story was never just whether Kuscevic was a good player. The deeper question was what kind of defense Toronto were trying to build, and whether this signing would finally give Robin Fraser a reliable structure instead of another temporary solution. Let's begin. 1. Why Toronto needed him. Toronto did not make this move for glamour. The need was structural. The previous cycle had left the team too easy to stretch, too vulnerable in transition, and too dependent on emergency defending. Fullbacks were often exposed, the central corridor opened too easily, and the team rarely looked settled for long. So when the club started rebuilding in early 2026, the logic was clear. Repair the spine first. The Saint. Josh Sargent addressed one end of the pitch. Walker Zimmerman addressed part of the other. But one experienced center back was never going to be enough if Fraser wanted flexibility. Toronto still needed a defender who could play inside different systems, defend space without panic, and help younger players around him hold their positions with more confidence. That is where Kuscevic entered the picture. He arrived on loan from Fortaleza with an option to buy, carrying experience from Chile and Brazil rather than the usual MLS pathway. And that mattered because Toronto were not just searching for a name. They were searching for a defender who could make experimentation safer. If Fraser wanted a back five, Kuscevic could play on the side of a three. If he wanted a back four, Kuscevic could work as part of a more traditional pair. The value of the signing was not only in his quality. It was in the extra tactical room he created. 2. What Kuscevic brings. Kuscevic arrived with the profile of a modern central defender, but without the exaggerated label that often follows that phrase. He is strong in duels, composed in possession, and generally more interested in correct positioning than dramatic recovery runs. His career in South America also shaped that profile. At Palmeiras, he was part of a trophy-winning environment in which defenders had to understand more than simple aggression. They had to manage distances, respect the first pass, and stay connected to the team's overall rhythm. At Fortaleza, that sample widened. He played in a demanding, transition-heavy league that punished hesitation. Tactically, his most useful quality is balance. He does not defend like a center-back who wants every moment to become a personal battle. He looks to close angles early, stay square to danger, and protect the line before the emergency begins. That is valuable beside Zimmerman, whose strengths are more visible. Zimmerman gives Toronto aerial command, vocal leadership, and the kind of front-foot defending MLS teams respect immediately. Kuscevic offers something quieter, clean coverage, measured decisions, and the ability to help a defensive unit hold its shape without every action feeling improvised. That contrast is why the pairing made sense. Toronto were not doubling up on the same type of defender. They were building a partnership with different tools, one organizer, one stabilizer. 3. The back five test. The first strong tactical image came on March 8th against FC Cincinnati. Fraser used a back five, with wingbacks helping protect the width and 3 center-backs controlling the central and half-space channels behind them. In that structure, Kuszewic's role was subtle but important. From the left side of the trio, he had to judge when to step into wide pressure, when to stay connected to Zimmerman, and when to leave the ball carrier to the wingback so the line would not distort. A back five changes the map. The outer center backs must defend more space laterally, but they receive more protection centrally. That gives Toronto a better platform against teams that attack quickly through the channels or try to isolate fullbacks in transition. It also gives the midfield a little more security, because the rest defense behind the ball remains stronger when the wingbacks push forward. For Toronto, that first use of Kuscevic showed why the signing mattered. He was not dropped into chaos. He was inserted into a structure designed to reduce volatility. The shape simplified certain decisions, helped the team defend deeper phases with more calm, and gave Fraser evidence that this group could look more controlled with an extra center back on the pitch. 4. Then the shape changed. The more revealing moment came later, when Toronto shifted into a back four against Columbus on March 21st. That changed everything. Now the two center backs had to protect the central corridor with less built-in cover. The fullbacks could still advance, but every attacking push increased the amount of space that might open beside or behind them. In a back four, the partnership is exposed more directly. Distances matter more. Communication matters more. Recovery speed matters more. This is where the Zimmerman-Kuscevic combination began to look useful rather than merely logical. Zimmerman could attack the more obvious duel, command the box, and organize the line. Kuscevic could read the second movement, cover the channel, and keep the pair from becoming too aggressive at the same time. One stepped. One balanced. That is the kind of relationship every good backline needs. Jason Hernandez later explained the significance of these early matches when he said, Toronto were still learning whether they were best as a back five team or a back four team. That comment matters because it revealed the real purpose of the signing. Toronto did not bring Kuscevic in to lock one system into place. They brought him in to help the coaching staff test both structures without the defensive line collapsing every time the shape changed. 5. Myth versus reality. The public story is easy to sell. Big striker arrives. Big center back arrives. Another experienced defender follows. Problem solved. But defense is not a collection of resumes. It is a network. Center backs look better when the midfield screens the first pass. Fullbacks look safer when wingers recover on time. A back line looks dominant when the distances in front of it are compact enough to keep attacks predictable. So Kuscevic should not be framed as a savior. He is more useful than that. He is a connector. He reduces the number of unstable moments. He allows Toronto to defend with slightly less panic. He helps the line hold a cleaner shape when the ball travels from one side to the other. And he gives the young defenders around him a clearer model of how to manage the position. That last point matters. Toronto's depth behind the starters includes Nixo and Gomez, Zane Monlouis, and Lazar Stefanovic. For younger defenders, development is not only about minutes. It is about environment. It is about learning in a back line that has reference points instead of confusion. Veteran center backs act like tutors without saying much. They teach spacing, body orientation, and timing through repetition. That may become one of Kuszewic's most important contributions over the season. 6. What this means now. By early spring, Toronto had enough evidence to feel encouraged, but not enough to declare the puzzle solved. The encouraging part was obvious. The club looked more capable of switching between a back five and a back four without losing all defensive coherence. The unresolved part was just as important. Hernandez suggested midfield could still be an area to strengthen, and that makes sense. Even the best center-back partnership will struggle if the line in front of it allows too many clean entries into dangerous zones. Still, the direction of the rebuild became clearer. Toronto were trying to fix the team in sensible layers. Sargent gave them a focal point in attack. Zimmerman gave them a command. Kuscevic added adaptability. Put those pieces together and the project starts to look less like random recruiting and more like an attempt to create a functional spine. If Kuscevic succeeds in Toronto, it will not be because every highlight looks dramatic. It will be because the back line starts to behave like a unit rather than a temporary arrangement. The distances will shrink. The panic will reduce. The younger defenders will be introduced into a more stable environment. And Fraser will have something every rebuilding coach needs. Options that do not destroy the system the moment they are used. Ending. Benjamín Kuszevic's arrival was presented as defensive reinforcement, and that was true. But it was also something more useful than a headline. It was a tactical signing, a structural signing, a move designed to give Toronto FC more ways to defend without losing its shape. Football is rarely about noise. It is about structure. And for Toronto's new backline, the most important story is not whether one player can rescue it. It is whether the whole unit can finally begin to move with the same logic. Thanks for following along with TFC on the road. If you enjoyed this update and want more Toronto FC content, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. We'll be back soon with another edition covering the latest news, matches, and behind-the-scenes stories. Until then, stay safe and keep cheering on the Reds.